Hello, my name is Ted Nenchev. This is my blog. 2 on 64 equals 1844 67 44 07 37 09 55 16 16. Zombie. Okay, so let's see what's the first on the agenda. Report on Ted Cruz as of April 1st. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Ted Cruz has two Twitter accounts that I know of. One is Senator Ted Cruz, the other is Ted Cruz. Let's check out Senator Ted Cruz here. Senator Ted Cruz started off his day by pranking the Fox News team with a fake tattoo. It's a really funny story. It's not funny at all. It's a mildly appropriate joke. It's kind of stupid, really. I just have to say, it's stupid. Then he tweets that his nephew's school came to visit the capital today and they sang a song about God. Really nice and loving. I got nothing against that. Also, should we know that I'm a Bulgarian, so, if any Americans have a problem with me doing politics, well, fuck you. I don't give a fuck. We all believe in the right to fucking shove our shit in your face, okay? So, that. Thanks to Mike Kelly for continuing to stand strong for the Second Amendment and against the UN's Arms Trade Treaty. Let's see what the UN has to say about that. UN.org Disarmament ATT. On April 2nd, 2013, the General Assembly adopted the landmark Arms Trade Treaty (ATT), regulating the international trade in conventional arms, from small arms to battle tanks, combat aircraft, and airships. Fucking airships. So, it's an international trade treaty, okay? I get why you would be annoyed because of the small arms thing. I don't know what that's all about, but let's read more. The treaty will foster peace and security by thwarting uncontrolled destabilizing arms flows to conflict regions. So no arms to conflict regions. Okay, that's a good point, Yuan. It will prevent human rights abusers and violators of the law of war from being supplied with arms. So violators of the laws of war. I know what you're thinking. War doesn't have laws. Fuck whoever. But whatever. And it will help keep warlords, pirates, and gangs from acquiring these deadly tools. So, it's supposed to affect warlords and so on. I mean, Okay, let's read more. Trade colors arms, blah blah blah. More on this in the next video. Page 1. The Arms Trade Treaty. Preamble. The states parties to this treaty, guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Recalling Article 26 of the Charter of the United Nations, which seeks to promote the establishment and maintenance of international peace and security with the least diversion for armaments of the world's human and economic resources. Underlining the need to prevent and eradicate the illicit trade in conventional arms and to prevent their diversion to the illicit market or for unauthorized end use and end users, including in the commission of terrorist acts. And in the commission of terrorist acts. Recognizing the legitimate political, security, economic, and commercial interests of states in the international trade in conventional arms, reaffirming the sovereign right of any state to regulate and control conventional arms exclusively within its territory pursuant to its own legal or constitutional system, acknowledging that peace and security, development, and human rights are pillars of the United Nations system and foundations for collective security, and recognizing that development, peace and security, and human rights are interlinked and mutually reinforcing. Recalling the United Nations Disarmament Commission guidelines for international arms transfer in the context of General Assembly Resolution 46/46H of December 1991, noting the contribution made by the United Nations Programme of Action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all its aspects, as well as the protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components, and ammunition, supplementing in the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the International Instrument to enable states to identify and trade in a timely, reliable manner illicit small arms and light weapons. Okay, page 2. Transnational organized crime and the International Instrument to enable states to identify and trace in a timely and reliable manner illicit small arms and light weapons. Recognizing the security, social, economic, and humanitarian consequences of the illicit and unregulated trade in conventional arms. Bearing in mind that civilians, particularly women and children, account for the vast majority of those adversely affected by armed conflict and armed violence. recognizing also the challenges faced by victims of armed conflict and their need for adequate care, rehabilitation, and social and economic inclusion, emphasizing that nothing in this treaty prevents states from maintaining and adopting additional effective measures to further the object and purpose of this treaty. Mindful of the legitimate trade and lawful ownership and use of certain conventional arms for recreational, cultural, historical, and sporting activities, where such trade, ownership, and use are permitted or protected by law. Mindful also of the role regional organizations can play in assisting states parties states parties upon request in implementing this treaty. Regional organizations can play in assisting. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it's some part of the UN. I don't know. Recognizing the voluntary and active role that civil society, including non-governmental organizations and industry, can play in raising awareness of the object and purpose of this treaty and in supporting its implementation. Acknowledging that regulation of the international trade in conventional arms and preventing their diversion should not hamper international cooperation and legitimate trade in material, equipment, and technology for peaceful purposes, emphasizing the desirability of our having universal adherence to this treaty, determined to act in accordance with the following principles. Page to end. Principles: the inherent right of all states to individual or collective self-defense as recognized in Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. The settlement of international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that internal peace and security and justice are not endangered in accordance with Article 2.3 of the Charter of the United Nations, refraining in their international relations from the threat of use of force against the territorial integrity of political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations in accordance with Article 2.4 of the Charter of the United Nations, non-intervention in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state in accordance with Article 2.7 of the Charter of the United Nations, respecting and ensuring respect for international humanitarian law in accordance with inter alia the Geneva Convention of 1949, and respecting and ensuring respect for human rights in accordance with inter alia the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Responsibility of all states in accordance with their respective international obligations to effectively regulate the international trade in conventional arms and to prevent their diversion, as well as the primary responsibility of all states in establishing and implementing their respective national control systems. The respect for the legitimate interests of states to require conventional arms to exercise their right to self-defense and for peacekeeping organizations, and to produce, export, import, and transfer conventional arms. Implementing this treaty in a consistent, objective, and non-discriminatory manner. Page 3, end. Page 4. Have agreed as follows. Article 1. Object and purpose. The object of this treaty is to establish the highest possible common international standards for regulating or improving the regulation of the international trade in conventional arms, prevent and eradicate the illicit trade in conventional arms, and prevent their diversion for the purpose of contributing to international and regional peace, security, and stability, reducing human suffering, promoting cooperation, transparency, and responsible action by states parties in the international trade in conventional arms, thereby building confidence among states parties. Article 2. Scope. 1. This treaty shall apply to all conventional arms within the following categories: A. Battle tanks. B. Armored combat vehicles. C. Large caliber artillery systems. D. Combat aircraft. E. Attack helicopters. F. Warships. G. Missiles and missile launchers. And H. Small arms and light weapons. 2. For the purpose of this treaty, the activities of the international trade comprise export, import, transit, transshipment, and brokering, hereafter referred to as transfer. Page 5. For purposes of this treaty, page 5. 2. For purposes of this treaty, activities of the international trade comprise export, import, transit, transshipment, and brokering, hereafter referred to as transfer. 3. This treaty shall not apply to the international movement of conventional arms by or on behalf of a state party for its use, provided that the conventional arms remain under that state party's ownership. Article 3. Munitions. Each state party shall establish and maintain a national control system to regulate the export of ammunition, munitions fired, launched, or delivered by the conventional arms covered under Article 2(1), and shall apply the provisions of Article 6 and Article 7 prior to authorizing the export of such munitions. Article 4. Parts and components. Each state party shall establish and maintain a national control system to regulate the export of parts and components where the export is in a form that provides the capability to assemble the conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 and shall apply the provisions of Article 6 and Article 7 prior to authorizing the export of such parts and components. Article 5. General Implementation 1. Each state party shall implement this treaty in a consistent, objective, and non-discriminatory manner, bearing in mind the principles referred to in this treaty. 2. Each party shall establish and maintain a national control system, including a national control list, in order to implement the provisions of this treaty. End of page 5. 3. Each state party is encouraged to apply the provisions of this treaty to the broadest range of conventional arms. National definitions of any of the categories covered under Article 2.1 AG shall not cover less than the descriptions the descriptions used in the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms at the time of entry into force of this treaty for the category covered under Article 2.1H. National definitions shall not cover less than the descriptions used in relevant United Nations instruments at the time of entry into force of this treaty. For each state party, pursuant to its national laws, shall provide its national control list to the Secretariat, which shall make it available to other state parties. State parties are encouraged to make their control lists publicly available. Control lists publicly available. 5. Each state party shall take measures necessary to implement the provisions of this treaty and shall designate competent national authorities in order to have an effective and transparent national control system. Regulating the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 and regulating the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 and of items covered under Article 3 and Article 4. Okay. 6. Each state party shall designate one or more national points of contact to exchange information on matters related to the implementation of this treaty. Each state party shall notify the Secretariat established under Article 18 of its national points of contact and keep the information updated. Article 6. Prohibitions. 1. A state party shall not authorize any transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 or of itself of items covered under Article 3 or Article 4, the transfer would violate its obligations under measures adopted by the United Nations Security Council acting under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, in particular arms embargoes. In particular, arms embargoes. 2. A state party shall not authorize any transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2(1) or of items covered under Article 3 or Article 4 if the transfer would violate its relevant international obligations under international agreements to which it is a party, in particular those relating to the transfer of or illicit trafficking in conventional arms. 3. A state party shall not authorize any transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2(1) or of items covered under Article 3 or Article 4 if it has knowledge at the time of authorization that the arms of its or items would be used in commission that the arms or items would be used in commission of genocide, crimes against humanity, grave breaches of the Geneva Convention of 1949, attacks directed against civilian objects, against civilian objects or civilians protected as such, or other war crimes as defined by international agreements to which it is a party. Page 7. Article 7. Export and export assessment. 1. If the export is not prohibited under Article 6H, if the export is not prohibited under Article 6, each exporting state party prior to authorization of the export of conventional arms covered under Article 2(1) or of items covered under Article 3 or Article 4 under its jurisdiction and pursuant to its national control system shall, in an objective and non-discriminatory manner, taking into account relevant factors including information provided by the importing state in accordance with Article 8(1), assess the potential that the conventional arms or items A. would contribute to or undermine peace and security. B. could be used to I. commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I think that these are supposed to be big eyes. That's T. Commit or facilitate a serious violation of international human rights law. 3 I's. Commit or facilitate an act constituting an offense under international conventions or protocols relating to terrorism to which the exporting state is a party, or 4. That's IV. Commit or facilitate an act constituting an offense under international conventions or protocols relating to transnational organized crime to which the exporting state is a party. 2. That's 2 dots, not Roman. Or is it Greek? I don't know. I think it's Roman numerals. Yeah. This is normal numerals. 2. The exporting state party shall also consider whether there are measures that could be undertaken to mitigate risks identified in A or B in paragraph 1, such as confidence building measures or jointly developed and agreed programs by the exporting and importing states. 3. If after conducting this assessment and considering available mitigating measures, the exporting state party determines that there is an overriding risk of any of the negative consequences in paragraph 1, the exporting state party shall not authorize the export. End of page 7. Let's see now page 8. Let's start with 4. The exporting state party in making this assessment shall take into account the risk of the conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 or of the items covered under Article 3 or Article 4 being used to commit or facilitate serious acts of gender-based violence or serious acts of violence against women or men and children. Women and children. Right. Each exporting state party shall take measures to ensure that all authorizations for the export of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 or of items covered under Article 3 or Article 4 are detailed and issued prior to the export. 6. Each exporting state party shall make available appropriate information about the authorization in question under request to the importing state party and to the transit or transshipment states parties subject to its national laws, practices or politics or practices or policies. 7. If after an authorization has been granted, an exporting state party becomes aware of new relevant information, it is encouraged to reassess the authorization after consultations, if appropriate, with the importing state. Article 8. Import. 1. Each importing state party shall take measures to ensure that appropriate and relevant information is provided upon request pursuant to its national laws to the exporting state party, to assist the exporting state party in conducting its national export assessment. Under Article 7, such measures may include end-use or end-user documentation. To each Importing state parties shall take measures that will allow it to regulate where necessary. Imports under its jurisdictions of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. Such measures may include import systems. 3. Each importing state party may request information for the exporting state party concerning any pending or actual export authorizations where the importing state is the country of final destination. Article 9. Transit or transshipment. Each state party shall take appropriate measures to regulate where necessary and feasible the transit or transshipment under its jurisdictions of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 through its territory in accordance with relevant international law. This concludes page 8. Okay, let's see now. Article 9. Transit or transshipment. Each state party shall take appropriate measures to regulate where necessary and feasible the transit or transshipment under jurisdictions of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 through its territory in accordance with relevant international law. Article 10. Brokering. Each state party shall take measures pursuant to its national laws to regulate brokering taking place under its jurisdiction for conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. Such measures may include requiring brokers to register or obtain written authorization before engaging in brokering. Brokers. Article 11. Diversion. 1. Each state party involved in the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 shall take measure to prevent their diversion. 2. The exporting state party shall seek to prevent the diversion of the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 through its national control system established in accordance with Article 5.2 by assessing the risk of diversion of the export and considering the establishment of mitigation measures such as confidence-building measures of jointly developed and agreed programs by the exporting and importing states. Other prevention measures may include, where appropriate, examining parties involved in the export requiring additional documentation, certificates, assurances not authorize the export of other appropriate measures. 3. Importing, transit, transshipment, and exporting states parties shall cooperate and exchange information pursuant to their national laws where appropriate and feasible in order to mitigate the risk of diversion of the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. 4. If a state party detects a diversion of transferred conventional arms covered under Article 2.1, the state party shall take appropriate measures pursuant to its national laws and in accordance with international law to address such diversion. Such measures may include altering potentially affected states parties, examining diverted shipments of such conventional arms covered under Article 2.1, and taking follow-up measures through investigation and law enforcement. 5. In order to better comprehend and prevent the diversion of transferred conventional arms covered under Article 2.1, state parties are encouraged to share relevant information with one another on effective measures to address diversion. Such information may include information on illicit activities, including corruption, international trafficking routes, illicit brokers, sources of illicit supply, methods of concealment, common points of dispatch, or destinations under or destinations used by organized groups engaged in diversion. 6. States parties are encouraged to report to other state parties through the Secretariat on measures taken in addressing the diversion of transferred conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. This concludes page 9. As you know, page 10, Article 12, record keeping. 1. Each state party shall maintain national records pursuant to its national laws and regulations of its issuance of export authorizations or its actual export of the conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. 2. Each state party is encouraged to maintain records of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 that are transferred to its territory as the final destination, or that are authorized to transit or transship territory under its jurisdiction. 3. Each state party is encouraged to include in those records the quantity, value, model, type, authorized international transfers of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1, conventional arms actually transferred, details of exporting states, improving states, transit and transshipment states, and end users as appropriate. 4. Records shall be kept for a minimum of 10 years. Article 13. Reporting. 1. Each state party shall, within the first year after entry into force of this treaty for that state party, in accordance with Article 22, provide an initial report to the Secretariat of measures undertaken in order to implement this treaty, including national laws, national control lists, and other regulations, and administrative measures. Each state party shall report to the Secretariat on any new measures undertaken in order to implement this treaty. When appropriate, reports shall be made available and distributed to state parties by the Secretariat. End of page 10. 2. States parties are encouraged to report to other states parties through the Secretariat information on measures taken that have been proven effective in addressing the diversion of transferred conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. 3. Each state party shall submit annually to the Secretariat by 31st of May a report for the preceding calendar year concerning authorized or actual exports and imports of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. Reports shall be made available and distributed to states parties by the Secretariat. The report submitted to the Secretariat may contain the same information submitted by the state party to relevant United Nations frameworks, including the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms. Reports may exclude commercially sensitive or national security information. Article 14. Enforcement. Each state party shall take appropriate measures to ensure national laws and regulations that implement the provisions of this treaty. Article 15. International cooperation. 1. States parties shall cooperate with each other consistent with their respective security interests and national laws to effectively implement this treaty. 2. States parties are encouraged to facilitate international cooperation, including exchanging information on matters of mutual interests regarding the implementation and application of this treaty pursuant to their respective security interests and national laws. 3. State parties are encouraged to consult on matters of mutual interest and to share information as appropriate to support the implementation of this treaty. 4. State parties are encouraged to cooperate pursuant to their national laws. In order to assist national implementation of the provisions of this treaty, including through sharing information regarding illicit activities and actors, and in order to prevent and eradicate the diversion of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1. 5. States parties shall, where jointly agreed and consistent with their national laws, afford one another the widest measure of assistance in investigations prosecutions and judicial proceedings in relation to violations of national measures established pursuant to this treaty. 6 states parties are encouraged to take national measures and to cooperate with each other to prevent the transfer of conventional arms covered under Article 2.1 becoming subject to corrupt parties. 7. States parties are encouraged to exchange experience and information on lessons learned in relation to any aspect of this treaty. Article 16. International assistance. 1. In implementing this treaty, each state party may seek assistance, including legal or legislative assistance, institutional capacity building, and technical, material or financial assistance. Such assistance may include stockpile management, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs. Model legislation and effective practices for implementation. Each state party in a position to do so shall provide such assistance upon request. 2. Each state party may request, offer, or receive assistance through inter alia, the United Nations, international, regional, sub-regional, or national organizations, non-governmental organizations, or on a bilateral basis. 3. A voluntary trust fund shall be established by states parties to assist requesting states parties requiring international assistance to implement this treaty. Each state party is encouraged to contribute resources to the fund. Article 17. Conference of States Parties. 1. A conference of states parties shall be convened by the Provisional Secretariat established under Article 18 no later than 1 year following the entry into force of this treaty, and thereafter at such other times as may be decided by the Conference of State Parties. The Conference of State Parties shall adopt by consensus its rules of procedure at its first session. 3. The Conference of State Parties shall adopt financial rules for itself as well as governing the funding of any subsidiary bodies it may establish, as well as financial provisions governing the functioning of Secretariat. At each ordinary session it shall adopt a budget for the financial period until the next ordinary session. 4. The Conference of State Parties shall A. review the implementation of this treaty, including the development in the field of conventional arms, B. Consider and adopt recommendations regarding the implementation and operation of this treaty, in particular the promotion of its universality. C. Consider amendments to this treaty in accordance with Article 20. D. Consider issues arising from the interpretation of this treaty. E. Consider this and decide the task and budget of Secretariat. F. Consider the establishment of any subsidiary bodies as may be necessary to improve the functioning of this treaty, and G. Perform any other function consistent with this treaty. 5. Extraordinary meetings of the Conference of States Parties shall be held at such other times as may be deemed necessary by the Conference of States Parties, or the written request of any state party, provided that this request is supported by at least 2/3 of the states parties. Article 18 is next. Okay, now let's start at Article 18, page 14. Article 18, Secretariat. 1. This treaty hereby establishes a secretariat to assist states parties in the effective implementation of this treaty, pending the first meeting of the Conference of States Parties. A provisional secretariat will be responsible for the administrative functions covered under this treaty. 2. The secretariat shall be adequately staffed. Staff shall have the necessary expertise to ensure that secretariat can effectively undertake the responsibilities restricted in paragraph 3. 3. The secretariat shall be responsible to states parties within a minimized structure. The secretariat shall undertake the following responsibilities: A. Receive, make available, and distribute the reports as maintained by this treaty. B. Maintain and make available to states parties the list of national points of contact. C. Facilitate the matching of offers of and requests for assistance for treaty implementation, and promote international cooperation as requested. D. Facilitate the work of the Conference of States Parties, including making arrangements and providing the necessary services for meetings under this treaty, and perform other duties as decided by the Conference of States Parties. Next, Article 19. My mouth's a little dry, I don't know why. Dispute Settlement. Article 19. 1. States parties shall consult and by mutual concern and by States parties shall consult and by mutual consent cooperate to pursue settlement of any dispute that may arise between them with regards to the interpretation or application of this treaty, including negotiations, mediations, conciliation, judicial settlement, or other peaceful means. States parties may pursue by mutual consent arbitration to settle any dispute between them regarding issues concerning the interpretation of application of this treaty. Article 20, and I'm gonna stop here. Okay, Article 20, Amendments. 1. 6 years after the entry into force of this treaty, any state party may propose an amendment to this treaty. Thereafter, proposed amendments may only be considered by the Conference of States Parties every 3 years. Any proposal to amend this treaty shall be submitted in writing to the Secretariat, which shall circulate the proposal to all states parties not less than 180 days before the next meeting of the Conference of States Parties, at which amendments may be considered pursuant to paragraph 1. The amendments shall be considered at the next Conference of States Parties, at which amendments may be considered pursuant to paragraph 1 if no later than 120 days after its circulation by the Secretariat. A majority of States Parties notify the Secretariat that they support consideration of the proposal. 3. The Secretariat parties shall make every effort to achieve consensus on each amendment. If all efforts at consensus have been exhausted and no agreement reached, the amendment shall, as a last resort, be adopted by a 3/4 majority vote of the states parties present and voting at the meeting of the Conference of State Parties. For the purpose of this article, states parties present a voting means. States parties present a casting an affirmative. State parties present and casting an affirmative or negative vote. The depository shall communicate any adopted amendment to all states parties. 4. An amendment adopted in accordance with paragraph 3 shall enter into force for each state party that has deposited its instrument of acceptance for that amendment 90 days following the date of deposit, with the depository of the instruments of acceptance by a majority of the number of states parties at the time of the adoption of the amendment Thereafter it shall enter into force for any remaining state party 90 days following the date of deposit of its instrument of acceptance for that amendment. Wow. Article 21. Signatures, ratifications, signature, ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession. I don't know what that is. 1. This treaty shall be open for signatures at the United Nations headquarters in New York by all states from 3rd of June 2014 until its entry into force. This treaty is subject to ratification, acceptance, or approval by each signatory state. Following its entry into force, this treaty shall be open for accession by any state that has not signed the treaty. I don't know what accession is. The instruments of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession shall be deposited with the depository. Article 22. Entry into force. This treaty shall enter into force. That's 1. This treaty shall enter into force 90 days following the date of the deposit of the 50th instrument of ratification, acceptance, or approval with the depository. I don't know what the 50th instrument is. 2. For any state that deposits its instrument or of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession subsequent to the entry into force of this treaty, this treaty shall enter into force for that state 90 days following the date of deposit of this instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval, accession. Too much Coca-Cola, sorry. Plus my teeth are all metal. Article 23. Provisional application. Any state may, at the time of signature of the deposit of its instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession, declare that it will apply provisionally. Article 6 and 7 pending the entry into force of this treaty for that state. Article 24 is next, and I think, yeah, we have enough time. Article 24, duration and withdrawal. This treaty shall be of unlimited duration. 2. Each state party shall, in exercising its national sovereignty, have the right to withdraw from this treaty. It shall give notification of such withdrawal to the depository, which shall notify all other state parties. The notification of withdrawal may include an explanation of the reasons for its withdrawal. The notice of withdrawal shall take effect 90 days after the receipt of the notification of withdrawal by the depository, unless the notification of withdrawal specified later date. 3. A state shall not be discharged by of its withdrawal from the obligations arising from this treaty, while it has a party to this treaty, including any financial obligations that it may have accrued. Accrued. What's accrued mean? I don't know what accrued means. And next is the 17th and final page. Alright, Article 25, Reservations. 1. At the time of signature, ratification, acceptance, approval, or accession, each state may formulate reservations unless the reservations are incompatible with the object and purpose of the treaty. 2. A state party may withdraw its reservation at any time by notification to this effect addressed to the depository. Article 26. Relationship with other international agreements. 1. The implementation of this treaty shall not prejudice. 1. The implementation of the treaty shall not prejudice obligations undertaken by states parties with regards to existing or future international agreements to which they are parties, where those obligations are consistent with this treaty. 2. This treaty shall not be cited as grounds for voiding defense cooperation agreements concluded between states parties to this treaty. Article 27. Depository. The Secretariat General of the United Nations shall be the depository of this treaty. Article 28. Authentic text. The original text of this treaty, of which the Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish texts are equally authentic, shall be deposited with the Secretary General of the United Nations, done at New York, the 2nd day of April 2013. That's 25 to 28.